It's the only game that truly reflects the American century. Its icons and images defining the nation's palette. A country and a sport maturing together. For well over a century, the game of college football has taken shape. Every Saturday, every autumn. And it evolved, not steadily, but through inspired leaps. Individual men redefined the possibilities of the game. And their actions all communicated the same message. I dare you to look away. Game day heroes. When Doug Flutie arrived at Boston College in the fall of 1981, there was common ground. Few people thought that either the player or the school belonged in big-time college football.
When I started getting recruited, the bigger schools were basically saying, look, we really don't think you're going to be a quarterback at the college level. In fact, I remember one guy from Ohio State saying that blatantly. He says, you know, let's be honest with each other, you're not a college quarterback. Even Boston College was skeptical.
We ended up getting Doug. You know, we got Doug in there playing, and what we would do was feed off of his excitement. And the coaches would always be like, look, if you give that kid an extra second, something good's gonna happen, no matter whether we were up or down. Hey, fight your fannies off for this kid, and something good is gonna happen.
Game by game, week by week, Flutie developed a reputation as a winning quarterback. And Boston College's reputation grew alongside his. By the end of his senior year, Flutie was the front runner for the Heisman Trophy, and BC was headed to the Cotton Bowl. But looming was college football's Goliath, the Miami Hurricanes.
And the Hurricanes of Miami, the defending national champions, their coach is Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, sure, badass Miami. They have, you know, you read it in the papers, they always had some type of criminals.
Our guys were extremely confident, almost to the point of people saying that we were too confident, we were overconfident. We did have a swagger.
They had that cockiness to them, and they were Miami, and the thing that amazed me was just their athleticism.
Those were the kids everybody wanted.
They could fly past you and run up and down the field, and it felt like we were shooting over our heads.
Now it is Jack Bicknell and Doug Flutie who are taking this team to the Cotton Bowl.
We knew that we weren't going to outrun them, we weren't going to outquick them. We kind of had to outposition them and outtime them. And that was our offense. It was all about timing.
And so we came out of the gate smoking.
Flutie with Martin, touchdown Boston College.
We just walked it up and down the field. It was like practice. You line up, you take your read, you throw the ball, the guy's open, he catches it.
And it's complete for the touchdown. He hits Gerald Phelan.
I can remember every time we scored,
Going for the corner and BC touchdown.
we'd go over, we'd sit down, and we'd hear them moving the ball down. We'd be back out in the field within 5 minutes.
Here he comes, over the top for the touchdown.
You know, we'd score, they'd score. It was a shootout. And early in the game, I can remember saying, whoever has the ball last in this game is going to win.
The Miami offense was led by quarterback Bernie Kosar, who had racked up 447 passing yards on the day.
Touchdown, Miami.
Flutie and Bernie Kosar traded punches all game long.
Late in the fourth quarter, Boston College led 41-38. But Miami had the ball, it was driving. Just over a minute remained in the game.
I remember looking at the clock and saying, just hurry up and score. We just stick the thing in the end zone now so we have a little bit of time.
It was just, let them score quicker. Coach, let them score quicker. And how do you go up to a head coach and say, hey, coach, let them score? But everybody on that sideline was mumbling. All the offensive coaches were mumbling. Just let them get in the end zone. Give us more time.
Broughton to the end zone.
Miami finally scored the go-ahead touchdown, igniting a celebration in the Orange Bowl. Doug Flutie had 80 yards and only 28 seconds.
I was always a big analyst of those situations. And I would criticize NFL quarterbacks when I was 12 years old of when they used their timeouts and why didn't they do this and why didn't they do that. And, always felt like the time management thing was kind of my cup of tea as I grew up.
I didn't think he had a chance. And obviously you can tell by my tone of voice, I don't think it's gonna work out.
Doug Flutie is down to his last at bat.
As strange as it sounds, me sitting here talking, we still felt pretty confident. I know I certainly did.
And so, with 6 seconds to play, on a misty, muggy South Florida afternoon, Doug Flutie loaded his slingshot one final time.
We practiced this play every day, and it was kind of how we ended practice. At the end of every Thursday and Friday practice, okay, flood tip, fellas.
I think he's got to put it up down and deep in the end zone.
Maybe a designed scramble to allow him to find some time.
We know the play. Miami's got to know the play. They know what we're going to do, and they know we got to get in the end zone, guys. It's not a secret.
But when I ran down the field and ran past the free safety at the 5-yard line, I was very surprised that he allowed me to go by him. Maybe he didn't think Doug could throw the ball that far. I mean, I just don't know what was going through his mind, but that's the last thing you want to do as a free safety.
Maybe he was underestimating arm strength, I don't know. But when you see someone start to roll, you don't think they're going to be throwing the ball 60-something yards.
Flutie flushed, throws it down.
All I see is the ball go down over 2 defensive backs' heads. I see them go up for it, and I just assumed it fell incomplete.
Our defensive back, underplayed the ball and actually knocked another defensive back off of tipping it.
And everybody bumped into each other. The hands went up. The ball was eclipsed for an instant as it disappeared behind the hands, and all of a sudden it was just like as if you catch something out of the corner of your eye, like a pencil's falling off the table, so you just react to it.
Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. He threw it into the end zone. There was no time left on the clock.
I didn't have any idea who caught the ball. My spotter didn't know, I didn't know, nobody in the booth knew. Fortunately for me, there was a Boston College graduate in the truck. He told me that it was Gerard Phelan.
Phelan is at the bottom of that pile.
As I'm running down the field, I don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden I see an official do this. I just turn around, I look, and Doug can't see. If I can't see, Doug can't see. I turn around and I do this, boy, and he just jumps right up, right into my arms. Luckiest catch I ever made. I caught Doug at the end of that play.
I understood how to use the clock.
Well, here we go. Here's your ball game, folks, as Flutie takes the snap. He drops straight back, has some time. Now he scrambles away from one hit. Looks, uncorks a deep one for the end zone. Phelan is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown! 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 Boston College! He did it! He did it! Flutie did it! He got Phelan in the end zone! Touchdown! I know I believe.
Some say college football wasn't built. They say it was born. And its birth date was October 18th, 1924. 60 years before Doug Flutie threw his historic Hail Mary, college football was nothing more than a hobby for snobs and frat boys. An offshoot of rugby considered so dangerous, President Teddy Roosevelt threatened to have it abolished. That is until one day and one man.
As you look back at the 20th century, the Roaring '20s is one of the most important decades in all sports. You had Gene Tunney and Jack Dempsey, you had Babe Ruth, and you had this guy who wore that strange number of 77.
You know, there was a time when you said Red Grange, it was synonymous with college football.
I think in the history of college football, you would have to say he's one of the most 5 famous players. He might even be first.
That's Red Grange! Come on, you
Number 77. He really was something special, and everybody knew it. Plus, he had those great nicknames, the Galloping Ghost and the Iceman from Wheaton, owing to a summer job where he delivered 25-pound chunks of ice. And he one time said, when he was a student at the University of Illinois, he said, there are people here at school that can get 90s and 100s on chemistry tests and mathematical tests, and I can't. He said, I can run.
He had that great day. The greatest day in the history of college football is probably October 18th, 1924.
On a gray October day, an Illinois junior named Harold Red Grange walked out to his own end zone to field the opening kickoff against Michigan. It was Illinois' homecoming. 67,000 people screamed in the stands around him. None of them knew that Red Grange was about to revolutionize an American pastime. All they knew about Red Grange was that he wasn't wearing socks.
Bob Zupke was the coach of the Illinois football team. He did something interesting. Before the game, he told his players to take off their woolen socks. So they went out on the football field without their socks on. This so upset hurry-up Fielding Yost, the coach at Michigan, that he called a timeout just to see what was going on.
He says, well, they must have greased their legs. That's why they've taken off the socks. So he gets the referees to come over and he has them feel the legs of every Illinois player to make sure they didn't put some kind of grease or a liquid or something on their legs.
And it was interpreted that Bob Zupke was pulling a psychological ploy to upset Michigan before the game even began.
The game started and Grange took the opening kickoff at his own 5-yard line. He slipped through a gang of would-be Michigan tacklers at the 3. When he cut back across the field, he realized he only had one man left to beat.
They only had the safety man. He was back pretty much on the goal line. And I just had one thought in my head. I thought, after these 10 guys get me this far, if that one man can tackle me from a touchdown, I am a pretty lousy football player.
Red Grange ran the opening kickoff back 95 yards for a touchdown. The crowd exploded. And then Michigan did what seems unusual now, but was customary back in the defensive-oriented game of the 1920s. They opted to kick off to Illinois again.
Many coaches would prefer to have the opposition have the ball in their own territory, because if they lost it, then this was a good chance to score.
On the third play from scrimmage, Illinois handed the ball to Grange, who ran 67 yards for his second touchdown. And then the cycle repeated. Michigan would kick to Illinois, Illinois would hand off to Grange, and Grange would run for touchdowns.
It was just like, this can't happen. And if it was against perhaps Butler or some second-rate school, maybe, but this is Michigan, and it's just stunning.
Before the first quarter ended, Grange had run for 4 touchdowns.
Grange is so exhausted after about 11 minutes of the first period that he doesn't say so, but he's just begging to get out of the game. He's run himself silly, and here is a man who has 4 touchdowns of 67, 95, 40, and 35 or so yards within 12 minutes.
He sits out the whole second quarter. He's exhausted. Comes back in the second half, ends up scoring 5 touchdowns that day. Passed for another touchdown, rushed for 402 yards. Might have been as good a day as anybody ever enjoyed in college football.
Probably the single greatest game any player has ever had in the history of college football. He destroyed Michigan, and that day he became immortal. You don't want to say a football player is immortal, but if you ever had a football player who was immortal, it was Red Grange.
Well, you know, down here in this part of the country, we've been a little ahead of a lot of them in a lot of respects, football-wise.
On November 20th, 1935, the sporting world converged on Fort Worth, Texas, the heart of tornado country. They came to see #1 TCU play 4th-ranked SMU in a game with national championship implications.
And they would throw 20, 30 times a game, which was unheard of then. It was a little bit more sophisticated version of sandlot football, where you say, okay, you snap the ball to me, you go down to the car and turn left.
They were there to see a storm brewing on the field, which promised to take the game to the air. They were in attendance to see the exploits of TCU's quarterback, Sammy Baugh.
They called him Slinging Sammy Baugh. Sammy Baugh was just an uncanny passer without much effort, seemingly with no effort at all. He could just take the ball and fling it.
Baugh rifles a bullet into the end zone, touchdown.
In my book, he is the great passer of all time, taking all of them together today. Great person, great individual, and great star at TCU, you know.
He had total confidence in his ability to do things. And Sam has a little bit of a Daniel Boone type character about him.
One time the coach there told him, now Sammy, the receiver's going down, and when he turns, I want you to hit him in the eye with the ball. And Sammy supposedly said, Coach, which eye?
Texas, where the TCU Hornet Frogs and the SMU Mustangs contest for the Southwest Conference Championship and the probable Rose Bowl invitation.
In a game that turned Sammy Baugh into a legend, he threw the ball 44 times.
Again, Sammy Baugh drops back and shoots one right down the center of the field, which is caught by L.D. Myers.
I mean, this was considered a massive gamble, and nobody did this.
Many of the fans in attendance had never seen Southwest Conference football before, and they were stunned to see Sammy Baugh firing again and again in almost any situation.
Sammy Baugh fades back and shoots one, shoots it over for a touchdown. SMU 14, TCU 13.
TCU had several chances to pull away, but Sammy Baugh's receivers dropped 8 of his bullet-like passes. SMU snatched the victory with a last-second touchdown pass.
Long pass down the field, and it's swept into the arms of Bobby Wilson for a touchdown.
The fans and the press, including sports writer Grantland Rice, who witnessed the game, had seen the future of college football, and it was in the air.
They wrote about those two teams as if they had discovered, gold or something, and they were just fascinated by it.
People wrote about that game, coaches read about it throughout the country, and they started thinking, maybe there is something to passing it as an offense.
It didn't matter that he completed only 17 for 180 yards, or that TCU lost. The legend of Slinging Sammy Baugh was born. In the mid-1950s, a player arrived on the college scene whom words fail to describe. Flabbergasted stories began traveling down from the Northeast. Awestruck descriptions of a man with the strength of 10 and the intensity of 20.
And I'm my harshest critic because I remember all the things I didn't do, because I always wanted to do as well as I could.
It was sort of a Paul Bunyan type thing. He, in the final home game against Colgate, he scored 43 points.
It didn't take any genius to know that Jim Brown was special. When I used to tell people about him, I would say that he had legs like telephone poles, except there weren't any telephone poles that strong.
But then there was the small waist, and going up from the waist, it was like an inverted pyramid, going up to the shoulder and the chest. It was monstrous. He was the strongest built person overall that I have ever seen. and it showed on the football field.
Brown is the man with a mission. Just watch this all-American running style.
I had the opinion, and I've always had this opinion, there's only been one great football player, and it was Jim Brown.
Jim Brown's games at Syracuse were rarely televised, so to most football fans, the great runner was more legend than man. The nation was formally introduced to Jim Brown in 1957 at the nationally televised Cotton Bowl. At the same time as his team arrived in Dallas, Jim Brown was formally introduced to the state of Texas.
It was just an experience that I had mixed emotions about because it was, political. The number one thing on my mind was race, and it shouldn't have been.
Thousands of football fans flocked to the huge Cotton Bowl Stadium to be entertained by minstrel bands in colorful costumes.
They had black entertainers dressed as minstrels, just as they had been in the early 1880s, right after the Civil War. And it was right in front of the Cotton Bowl. This was the entertainment for Dallas.
Syracuse's opponent was Texas Christian University, who was essentially playing a home game. It had been 20 years since TCU suited up Sammy Baugh, but one thing hadn't changed. The Horned Frogs were all homegrown Texas boys.
There were no black players on the Southwest Conference teams, and playing Jim Brown, who was black from Syracuse, was a little special for them. They were very aware of who he was, that he was an All-American, that he was maybe the best football player they'd ever seen.
Brown's first half was a masterpiece. His versatility was as astonishing as his strength. He threw a 20-yard pass that set up his own score. He ran for both Syracuse touchdowns.
So Jim Brown goes the last mile. There goes a loaf of bread for Syracuse. That was good for 4 yards, 6 points.
And he kicked both of the extra points.
I had a good game, but I didn't reach my peak.
Jim Brown brought to the sport an energy source that not many people have. He was driven by demons of the past that surfaced in anger that he could control, and he turned it into physical energy that made him run a little bit faster and hit a little bit harder, and I think that's what made him special.
This man he was Superman. When you gave the ball to Brown, even if they were keying on him, you had to have 3, 4 people to really take him down.
At halftime, TCU's team went into the locker room tied 14 apiece. TCU's offense took charge in the third quarter.
And he runs 7 yards to the goal line, and the Frogs have moved ahead again.
The Horned Frogs punctured Syracuse for 2 quick touchdowns and took the lead 28-14. Syracuse was on the brink.
Syracuse was a little outdated with our offense, and the plays were limited.
The burden of the comeback fell upon Brown's shoulders. In the fourth quarter, Brown returned a kickoff 46 yards to midfield.
Jim Brown behind tremendous cover, running back to kickoff for 46 yards.
Syracuse drove to the goal line, and Brown scored his 3rd touchdown of the day on a 1-yard plunge, bringing the game within 8. But as Brown lined up to kick the extra point, a TCU defenseman named Chico Mendoza burst through the line and blocked the kick.
There was a change in assignment between my fullback and my end, and I don't think the fullback got the change.
The block turned the tide of the game. Syracuse scored once more, but could not overcome the blocked extra point. They lost 28-27. But to a television audience of millions, the final score of the game seemed secondary.
This game was Jim Brown's coming into prominence.
Bowl President Bob Cullum presents Jim Brown one of the Outstanding Player Awards.
A lot of people gave me a lot of credit for that game. It's the first time I guess they saw me on national television.
He was probably the greatest runner there ever was, college or professional.
I spoke to the ball players from TCU. They all acknowledged that this was the best ball player that they had ever come up against. I mean, They didn't speak about him being black, white, or green. I mean, he was just the best ball player that they had ever actually played against.
By the 1970s, the capabilities of a well-oiled offense were limitless. In 1972, a freshman running back at USC began making some bold statements about the impossible achievements he thought he was capable of. His name was Anthony Davis.
When I finally was a starter, I made a statement that I was going to have 2 long runs against Notre Dame. So a lot of people said, God, that little cocky, how's he going to do that? This is Notre Dame, the biggest, the most physical team in college football, the #1 collegiate team of all time.
A perfect day for football, and the Fighting Irish are coming onto the floor of the Los Angeles Coliseum.
It did not take long for Davis to back up his claim. Davis took the opening kickoff all the way back, 95 yards for a touchdown. Only one more long run remained for Davis to fulfill his preposterous promise.
There's no way he's going to bring back this second one. So they kicked it off.
Kickoff back to the 5, 10, 15, gets a block, an opening, gets away from a tackler, comes to the sideline. At the 40, 45, midfield. He fakes one guy at the 40, back to the 35, staggers. He's headed for the end zone for the second time today. Davis takes a kickoff all the way.
Davis, only a freshman, scored 6 touchdowns against Notre Dame that day.
I was arrogant and cocky and stupid. My junior year, I went back and found out how serious they took it.
And the Coliseum today is the site for the 46th meeting between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Southern California Trojans.
National TV game, 80,000 people in the stadium.
That's pretty rough. Tom Clements gets the ball.
Of course, Notre Dame was on top of the game better than we were.
Still got it. Comes back to throw. Gets his pass off. Going deep. Got a man. Touchdown. Notre Dame.
I knew what I was in for.
And the handoff goes to Anthony Davis. And Davis is hit right at the line of scrimmage. And he took a solid wallop from Niehaus.
AD left, he gets stuck. AD right, he gets stuck. AD up the middle, he gets stuck.
Cuts to the outside of the 20, and he is buried under the Notre Dame white shirts at the 20-yard line. And no question about it, every time Davis steps on some grass, there's going to be a white shirt going with him. The Trojans had better get something going pretty quick because the Fighting Irish have jumped to a 17-0 lead. They throw it off this time to McLean, and he scores.
Before we knew it, it was 24-0.
Anthony Davis managed to squeak in with a touchdown just before the first half ended.
Touchdown!
The score was 24-6 when USC coach John McKay gathered his team. Facing an opponent with a long history of memorable halftime speeches, the USC coach inspired with one of his own.
John McKay was a very volatile coach. And everybody was stunned, and he got the team together at halftime. This was the best halftime I've ever seen.
He just simply said, we can come back and win. Well, when he said that, we thought the man was out of his mind. There's no way you come back on Notre Dame like that, not 24-6. So he walks back in front of us and says, somebody has to make something happen here. And he's smoking his cigar, and he's blowing the smoke across the way. He said, and all of a sudden he looked at the corner of the locker room and says, they're going to kick the ball to AD, and he's going to bring it all the way back.
And I'll tell you this, the men of Troy have cut themselves a problem. They trail 24-6. Here's the kick. McLaughlin knocks it high and deep.
I haven't saw a kick like this in 2 years. Endo ran, perfect kick in my hands, 2 yards deep in the end zone.
And Davis, 2 yards deep in the end zone, will bring it back. The wedge gets him to the 20. He breaks it at the 25. He's long gone at the 40. It's now a foot race, and here goes Anthony Davis for 102 yards and a touchdown.
And I tell you, that was the fastest I ever ran.
I thought, okay, that makes it 24-12. Then it makes it a little closer. And then he runs and gets another touchdown.
And here's the pitch wide to Davis. Good blocking on the right side. Touchdown.
You just felt something happen. I mean, the creek was rising fast, and
it overflowed. It just, once it got started, gone. And that was truly, genuinely the night that Ara Parsegian learned to hate that damn white horse.
The second half is one of those things that occurs in games, whether you're playing football or baseball or basketball, where the momentum shifts. You could visually see the momentum in the game and the attitudes change on the field.
We turned into madmen. I mean, like, I was tireless. I was ready to go up, ready to go again.
Hayden gives the ball to Anthony Davis. Touchdown!
And then as he scored each touchdown, it was like the crescendo of an orchestra reaching high peak.
He's in there.
And you were just about ready to hear the cymbals clash. And he just went nuts, 6 touchdowns. That's not supposed to happen.
And we scored 49 points in 10 minutes.
And Hayden rolls left to the wide side, going to put it up, goes into the end zone. Touchdown! Hayden going deep. McKay wide open. Touchdown! Limits to put it up. Intercepted. It's ended for McAfee. It may be 6. Here goes Phillips. It's all the way. Touchdown!
What did it wind up, 55-24, something like that? How do I remember that number? And I can't remember my wife's birthday. I don't know. I don't know.
And the sky has indeed fallen on Notre Dame.
Collegiately and professionally, I've never been involved in anything like that. Greatest game I've ever been a part of. I've never seen a game like that ever since.
Oh, I'll tell you that Anthony Davis is a nightmare for Notre Dame.
After that game, walking out of the locker room, and I see these women in the shadow, and this one woman in particular came out, and she's waving this crucifixion in my face. She says, nobody does that against Notre Dame. You must be the devil.
Coach Bryant could be summed up as a motivator, a leader, someone that could make you dig deep inside yourself to find out whether you got guts. He would leave you out there. It was called, quote unquote, we used to laugh about gut check. He wanted to see if you had the guts to make it through it. He always taught us how to prepare for that opportunity, because you never know when that moment's going to come.
The moment was January 1st, 1979. The Sugar Bowl. #1 Penn State versus #2 Alabama. At stake, the national championship. And linebacker Barry Krause is lucky to still be a member of the Crimson Tide. 2 seasons earlier, he had broken one of Coach Bear Bryant's most sacred rules, team curfew, and found himself summoned to the legendary coach's office.
And I was standing before him, but he wouldn't look at me. And I said, Coach Bryant, I said, I'm sorry. Then I realized that wasn't good enough. And all of a sudden, I broke down and I started crying. I'm crying. And I looked at him with one eye open and I said, but he still wasn't looking at me. And I'm going, uh-oh, I'm in a lot of trouble. And because I had heard about a quarterback, a lot better looking, a lot better athlete, a guy named Joe Namath missing curfew, and Coach Bryant kicked him off of the team, kicked him off of scholarship. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. All of a sudden, I shifted into another gear of crying, and it was one of those ones where you lose all the air and you start jerking all over the place, and I've got tears flying. I said, Coach Bryant, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I said, I apologize. And I said, you got to understand, if you kick me off of scholarship, my mom is going to kill me, and I'm just jerking around, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, son, and he did it in his grumbling voice, and he says, you better straighten up. I said, yes, sir, and I go running out of that office as quickly as I could. And I learned a big lesson that day. When you're in a lot of trouble, cry.
Midway through the 4th quarter, Alabama was leading 14-7 when disaster struck. They fumbled on their own 19-yard line, giving Penn State a chance to steal the national title, and Barry Krause a chance to seize the opportunity that Bear Bryant had always told him to be ready for. Krause, a role player on the Crimson Tide defense, was in the game only because another player got hurt 3 minutes earlier.
77, Barry Krause goes in at linebacker now.
Penn State now had 3rd and goal from the 8-yard line. But before Barry Krause took center stage, his Alabama teammate, Don McNeil, made an incredible play of his own.
Roll to the right, puts it up, it is good, Fitzky. And I want to tell you something, folks. There was one whale of a defensive play by Alabama's Don McNeil.
McNeil stopped Fisk a mere 8 inches from the goal line, making it 4th down and destiny.
We all held hands. We kind of looked at each other and, man, this is what it's all about. This is gut check. This is what we've worked for. Somebody has to make the play. We're all going to be a part of it. I mean, this is the moment that you just wait for.
19-game win streak, only undefeated team in the country, ranked #1 in the nation. Alabama ranked #2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard.
I actually thought that they were going to play a little play-action pass, and fortunately for us, they decided just to hand the ball off. And the guy cuts actually back in to me. And then, you know, that's when I met him at the top and over the pile, and that's what you dream about.
Gooman!
When I hit him, I actually broke a corner of my helmet. I broke my face mask. I pinched a nerve in my neck. And what would happen is it would paralyze me immediately.
An Alabama man is down on the field. It looks like it might be Barry Krause. I think he just kind of got caught in the crush underneath.
And I was laying there, and I just didn't know. I didn't know if we stopped him. I didn't know. I laid there for a while, and Marty Lyons picked me up, and he goes, "We did it. We stopped him." And I was like, yes, we did.
It is over. Alabama has defeated Penn State, and the Bear goes for a ride.
And I remember coming off the field with Marty and with the guys, and it was just incredible.
He went head-on with Gooman and took a solid shot, but he got the job done. That's what he'll remember as the years go by.
Barry, I think it's symbolic of this struggle today that a member of the defensive team should be awarded the most outstanding player. And I know Coach Bryant is proud of you. I know your teammates are proud of you, and the Sugar Bowl is very proud of you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. Can I say something?
Okay.
I tell you, I thank God for the ability he gave me. Most of our defense, man, they played hell game. And it's a great feeling just to be able to play for Coach Bryant and to be a part of Alabama. Thank you. Thank you.
Barry Krause was named to the SEC's Team of the Decade and was a first-round draft pick of the Baltimore Colts. He played 10 seasons for the Colts, never topping the glory of that one moment in the 1979 Sugar Bowl. Lest we forget, the game of college football began as an offshoot of rugby. Over 100 years later, it has evolved into a machine that barely resembles its ancient ancestors. But every once in a rare while, a glimmer of the old game returns. And somehow, after a century of evolution, the game finds a way to come full circle.
Seen anything like it. For California, through and
The year was 1982. California versus Stanford. With time running out, Stanford and their comeback master, John Elway, trailed 19-17.
Throws for Harry. It's complete. Hold everything.
A flurry of euphoria spread wildly among the Stanford faithful.
Mark Harmon, 35-yard kick will win it. Listen to the crowd. Here's the snap. Here's the kick. It is long enough. It is good. Stanford hits it with 4 seconds to go and takes the lead 20-19. Only a miracle can save the Bears. It's Stanford.
It was awful chaotic. I was sitting on the bench and, thrilled to death to be ahead 20-19. To be honest with you, you never take anything for granted, but if this was one time we took it for granted, it was probably this time.
A simple squib kick, an easy tackle, and the Cardinal was bowl bound. 4 seconds remained on the clock, a mere formality.
At that point, I went on the field, and one of the other guys had gathered a group of guys on the sidelines just to say, hey, don't let the ball die, it's 4 seconds left, keep it alive.
The Bears in a seemingly impossible situation. They pretty well have to run it back.
Cal would have practice on Sunday, and they would have this drill called grabaz. And they would have this drill where it was like a rugby drill, where they would just have fun to let off steam. They would throw the ball around, and he'd try to tackle the guy, and he'd keep throwing around. And it was just kind of to let off steam kind of drill. Well, that drill became part of college football lore.
There we go with the kickoff. Harmon will probably try to squib it.
I think we were one guy short on the actual kickoff return team, and I remember looking to the right of me thinking, God, there's supposed to be somebody over there, but nobody's there, so I kind of slid over a little bit, which then happened to just put me in a position where when he kicked off, he kicked a squib kick, came right to me. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to score a touchdown. You know, it wasn't so much get rid of the ball, it was, hey, I'm going to score. After about 2 steps and seeing 3 Stanford guys running at me, I quickly changed my mind on that. I took a look to the sidelines and happened to see Richard Rogers standing there, so I threw him the ball. I saw him run up a few yards, turn around, lateral to Dwight Garner.
And when Dwight Garner starts up the field and he just gets shackled by a bunch of our guys.
You know, that's where the controversial part of the play, I think, begins.
Dwight Garner's knee, was it down? Was it not down?
He was down.
Dwight was 6 inches off the ground.
No way. The guy clearly was down.
There isn't a Stanford person who thought that his knee wasn't down.
We see his knee on the ground. We see him bent over backwards, and we're walking out on the field. I mean, we've got cheerleaders, you know, jumping on us, and we're celebrating, enjoying it.
The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers.
And the next thing I know, there's a wave of blue coming towards me. And no sooner would you get closer to that next person with the ball than it would disappear to somebody else.
Probably the most spectacular part of the play was Moret's lateral to me to finish off the laterals. Without looking, kind of an over the pass, flying in the air, you know, lobbed it up where it landed perfectly in my arms.
They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field.
Stanford band comes on the field. Kevin Moen is serpentining through the Stanford band. There's some guy named Gary Tyrell, a nondescript musician, you know, a student at Stanford, who's playing his trombone, and Kevin Moen hits him like Bronco Nagurski.
The only thing that we wish we'd have done is, you know, taught the trombone player how to tackle.
Boom, he knocks him over, and all of a sudden, what is happening here? And of course, the officials have got to get in a circle, because that's what officials always do. They always get in a circle when it's a time of conjecture, frustration. And what do we do now, folks?
Wait and see what happens. We don't know who won the game. There are flags on the field.
We try to huddle around the officials, and we could tell they were intimidated by what was going on. There were fans on the field. There was yelling and screaming. It was really loud, and they were trying to shove us away, and they didn't want to hear what we had to say. And then one guy steps away, and he calls a touchdown. And we just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Definitely at that point in time, it was the most tragic thing that had ever happened to me, and especially when we were kind of in line for a bowl game that year.
And those 2 guys from the bowl are standing behind me, and I'm standing right in front of them, and I said, well, guys, what do you think now? One guy looked at me and he said, you know, they always tell you in your life that you're going to see something that you've never seen before one time in your life. He said, I guess this is it. Well, I guess we'll give the bowl bid to the Air Force Academy or somebody like that.
The one time in your life you see something you've never seen before. College football offers that opportunity year after year, autumn after autumn.
The ball is still loose as they get it to Rogers. They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
From Barr to Brown, and Davis to Flutie, from the galloping ghost to the trombone player, forever etched into the rites of autumn.
There are flags on the field. The most amazing, sensational, dramatic, heart-rending, exciting, thrilling finish in the history of college football. Oh, excuse me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.